So, the Stanley Cup playoffs roll on with the Florida Panthers taking on the Boston Bruins in Game 1, Round 2 tonight. And looking at this series, look, anything can happen. These are two very good teams, and this is going to come across as rather dismissive of one of those teams. I don't see Boston winning this series. You look at the forward group. Florida feels more talented and, quite frankly, deeper. You look on the blue line, Florida feels more talented. Maybe not as deep, but Florida definitely feels more talented. And you look between the pipes, and Florida feels more talented. Swayman's very good, so is Bobrovsky. And that is where, if Boston is going to win this series, it is going to be Swayman comes in and just steals it. Because, scoring, Florida. Special teams, Florida. Defense, Florida. Everything else feels like it is the way of the Florida Panthers. And they are built for this time of year. They have home ice advantage in this series. And I do think that Boston got a very good draw getting Toronto in the first round. And now they have to face what feels like a bit of a juggernaut with a team that made it to the Stanley Cup final a year ago. Feels like they are a bit more complete this time around, and now is a team that can go out and play a style of hockey that the Bruins, I think, were very famous for playing, but they can do it better than Boston can do it now. And I think this is the series where the Bruins, with the issues they have down the middle, I think this really comes back to, I don't want to say bite them, but I just think it shows up in a real pronounced way that Boston is not good enough at the forward spots. Credit the Bruins for getting here, but I do think that series went 7 against Toronto, not because, a bit because of the Leafs, but it went 7 because Boston just wasn't quite that level this time around. They still have some great players. Don't get me wrong. This is a very good Boston Bruins team. This isn't a couple of these have felt a little negative on Boston. But this is more what the Panthers can do than what Boston can't do. And it is a bad matchup for the Boston Bruins against Florida. And I think this is where they are going to regret kind of sleepwalking through the back part of the regular season. I think they would love to have home ice in this series, and they don't, obviously, because of how they played down the stretch, how Florida played down the stretch, and now I think they are going to rue the day that they ended up falling behind the Florida Panthers in this bracket. But overall, what a playoffs we have left. I just went on about why I feel like Boston isn't going to win this series. If they do and they go on to win the Cup, we're not going to be like, oh my goodness, the Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup. And I feel that with all 8 teams that are remaining, there are going to be 4 teams at the end of this series, end of this round, that are going to be remarkably disappointed that their season is done after 2 rounds. It is going to feel like a failure of a season that it now ends in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And that is incredible to get to that point where it feels like all 8 of these teams, it's not cup or bust for all 8, but it is Stanley Cup aspirations for all 8 of them. And that is so much fun to get to that point here in the season. As far as the teams that lost, I was on Sportsnet 960 The Fan out here in Calgary here on Monday, and so I did a lot on the Leafs, but just to kind of tie it all up, it is time for Toronto to try something different. I'm not saying Matthews gone, Nylander gone, Marner gone, Tavares gone, but one of them. And it's such an interesting spot and a nice added wrinkle to it that Matthews clearly isn't going anywhere. Nylander just signed a very long, very expensive extension. He's not going anywhere. So it's one of the 2 pajama guys. It is Tavares, who had Leaf pajamas, grew up wanting to do this. Marner, who so passionately wanted to be a Toronto Maple Leaf and win as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And now one of them isn't going to be it. And for this team, I think to really take that next step, they have to make this move. And I do feel like it's going to be Marner who ends up being the one gone. Now, he has a no move, so he gets to kind of dictate where he wants to go, or if he wants to go at all. And he has said, the goal is to stay in Toronto. But as Luke Fox pointed out with me today, that call wasn't as, no, I'm a Leaf for life, as it has been in the past. And I think that they are, I think that he has kind of broken down on this, and I think he understands that there is probably life beyond the Toronto Maple Leafs for Mitch Marner in his NHL career. But Toronto has to make a change. The Shanna plan is done. I think you have to, front office wise, kind of clean house. Like Treliving, I think probably gets a bit of a stay because he just got there. But I think Keefe is definitely gone. And I would get rid of Shanahan. I think that Brendan Shanahan has had his hands in all of this. And I think that that has led to a lot of the issues that they have. And it hasn't worked. And Shanahan is the one constant. Well, not the one constant. There's a lot of constants through all of this. But in management, he is the one constant in it. And I think they need to now move on from that. And that will require an interesting direction. But I do think, sorry, I thought I heard a cat in here. But I do think that this is going to be a team that needs to get going in another way. There isn't a gigantic teardown needed, right? Like this is still a talented team, but a bit better, more efficient spending, I think, needs to happen. In terms of the actual game, that OT winner just simply can't happen. And on the radio call, Bowen called for Samsonov to come out and play that puck. This one is not on Ilya Samsonov. This is on the players that let Pastrnak get behind them and get a breakaway chance. I do not fault the goalie at all. He just about got to that one and couldn't make that save. It has to be it has to be the guys on the ice. Marner can't let that happen. Riley can't let that happen. And this is where the whole it's been 8 years things comes in, because that is just not a playoff effort. Overtime in Game 7 effort that gets you to allowing that goal to happen. It was a total breakdown from this team, and that honestly, if it were me, that's Marner's last moment as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And Riley, you feel gutted for him because he is the one in all of this who is just like I don't. They said before, effort isn't the issue with the Leafs, and I believe that, which isn't as reassuring as people want it to be, but. With Riley and with Marner, those are the two guys who are just working so hard. Riley can actually channel that energy into strong hockey. Marner, I think that type of pressure just eats him alive. But both those guys to be the ones to have Pastrnak just controller has been disconnected past them is really difficult. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't have got to that point. This is a team built on offense that scored 12 goals in 7 games. That's atrocious. And Luke Fox said they haven't scored 3 or more goals, or more than 3 goals in a playoff game in their last 14 playoff games. For a team built on offense, it is just simply not good enough. And the Golden Knights thing, we've kind of done that one to death. Not that we haven't done the Leafs to death, but we've done that one to death where, like, look, the whole, oh, well, their guys were injured. What an advantage for them. That goes out the window. They just look bagged at the end of this. And that second goal where Dallas has the cycle going in the corner and Steele knows to go to the front of the net and they know to drop it to Foxa and he knows to shoot. All of that isn't happening on Vegas because they didn't have that continuity throughout the season. Hurdle is just playing with Marchessault. I said Arenio today, that's the best player he's played with in like 5 years. And he has a chance in tight. If he slides it across, Marchessault can use a pool cue and just the puck into the net. But instead, like, he still gets a good chance. It's a backhand from 2 feet away. So it's still an all right chance. But it's just there's that continuity there that they weren't able to build during the regular season, and it ends up costing them. But what an amazing playoff we have left. Dallas against Colorado is going to be remarkable. Vancouver against Edmonton is just going to blow up hockey Twitter. And we already got one good game out of Rangers against Carolina. And that power play is so effective for this Rangers team. Like, they had the one goal, I think it was Trocheck who scored it. 4 passes took all 4 defenders out of the play. That's insanity to me. Like, they get it over on the wall. That draws the high defender up. He's out of the play now. So now you're dealing with 3. They pass it down low, or they pass it across, and that takes that defender out. Okay, let's get it down low. Now that defender has to come over to Zibanejad, and now it's just wide open in front, and boom, bang, bang, it's in. Like, 4 passes took 4 defenders out of the play and left a player wide open in front. It was art what the Rangers are able to do with the puck movement on their power play. 5-on-5, could it be a little bit better? Maybe. But this is a Rangers team that is a real threat. And you saw all the talent they had on display. And we also saw the thing that I talked about in this series, the worry I have for Carolina. I think this is such a talented team. That 4th goal can't happen for Freddie Anderson. And he is the biggest liability I think that's left in the playoffs for any team, is that he just isn't on the level that the rest of this Carolina Hurricanes team is. And like that Panarin goal just squeaking through him is a backbreaker. And then to end up losing by one is just devastating. And like the other guy's not letting those ones in. So Carolina is in a real difficult spot. I think going up against this Rangers team, it's going to be a hell of a series and going to be a hell of a postseason.